Hi. So I guess the first thing that I want to explain is why I really enjoy tanking on Heal Firebrand. Why I think you will enjoy tanking on Heal Firebrand if you're looking to tank or learn to tank, and where this guide is coming from. So the reason I like it so much is because it's easy to pick up. It doesn't take a lot to execute Heal Firebrand, at least to the most basic degree. And Heal Firebrand tanking is extremely safe, and you provide a lot of safety to your team. I do genuinely believe that this is a better place to start than Tank Chronomancer. I don't have a lot of experience tanking on Chronomancer. What I have tried, I found significantly more complicated than Heal Firebrand Tank, and also Tank Chronomancer takes up a spot that could otherwise be given to an extra DPS player, effectively slowing down your kills. The reason why I think you, the listener, will enjoy Heal Firebrand Tank is because, like I said, first and foremost, it's easy to pick up, but it also puts a lot less because it puts a lot less pressure on you as the tank to stay alive. You can kind of watch what's going on in the encounter, be the shock wall of your team, mark targets, make sure if somebody needs a ranged heal while they're off doing a mechanic, you can take care of that. You can watch boon up times. You don't have to constantly be micromanaging yourself and your positioning, because you can constantly keep blocking attacks for you and your team. And the place that this guide is coming from is really from a new player's perspective, as I'm setting around 200 Ally at the moment. I only recently returned to Guild Wars 2 and only very recently became a raiding player, or raider, and I've played all sorts of classes, and Heal Firebrand Tank is the one that I have definitely fallen for the most. I'm really enjoying tanking for both pugs and for my squads, for people that I know, and I can't really find very much information specifically pertaining to tanking on a Heal Firebrand on YouTube. There isn't a lot that changes between regular Heal Firebrand and tank Heal Firebrand in terms of skills and encounter knowledge and that kind of thing. So I guess let's take a look at how this class works. So first off, I guess I'll talk about the weapon choices. The Heal Firebrand and the Heal Firebrand Tank both basically have the same weapon choices. Some of them more niche, some of them much more catered to the tank role, but it's good to be familiar with all of them, as you'll probably end up using all of them. The main hands, or the two-handed weapons that you'll come into contact with, are the hammer and the staff. The main hand weapons are the mace and the axe, and the off-handed weapons are the focus and the shield. The safest setup, definitely one to start out with, all the way around, is mace, shield, and axe focus. Now, it does matter which way round these weapons go, and I'll explain why. So first of all, the mace provides an auto attack chain that results in an area heal, which is pretty sick. Your symbol on the mace is will provide you and your subgroup with permanent regeneration, and also heals while it's on the floor. Obviously with Alacrity, I believe you can keep this up 100% of the time. Yeah, you definitely can. Your Protector Strike, which is your 3, gives you an on-demand block that shares block and protection to allies when it's triggered, and you share those same boons with Shield 4. You have some modest break bar damage and a heal with Shield of Absorption. And then your axe, you provide permanent fury uptime with your second ability here, Symbol of Vengeance. You have some break bar damage and a tiny bit of burning on your 3. Teeny tiny bit of damage on your focus here, and then you've got an extremely strong personal block that lasts for 4 seconds and blocks 3 attacks, which helps to ignore a lot of boss mechanics. And I've got it traded at the moment, the focus, to give protection as well. Now, the reason why you want the focus and the mace separated is because the focus here gives you an on-demand block. The mace gives you an on-demand block, and so does the focus. Having them both on the same weapon set reduces the amount of on-demand blocks that you have, your panic buttons. If you get into a sticky situation where you're running out of magic charges or you don't have any retreats left, this can really kind of save your behind. The other weapons that you'll come into contact with are, like I said, the staff and the hammer. So staff has an AoE blast finisher, provides a symbol that gives swiftness. This is where most of your might comes from Empower. It's also a very significant heal. Auto attack chain doesn't really do much for you, just a little bit of damage. Line of warding can help with some encounter specific mechanics like Rig'em and Seekers, as well as the Shield 5 can do that for you. Hammer is probably the most niche, in my opinion. You provide your allies with permanent protection uptime, which is the number one reason why you would ever run this. You do have a blast finisher, so if you've got a symbol down or this line of warding here, you can AoE Condi Cleanse. You have a knockback and an immobilize, which again is great for Seeker control, Rig'em control, Golem control, Soulless Horror. It's not a bad weapon. From a new player perspective, I don't particularly enjoy it as one of my weapon choices on encounters where I'm actually trying to stay alive myself. But in low pressure encounters, it definitely is a contender. When it comes to gear, it's going to depend on how familiar you are with the class, the encounters, how easy you find it to block attacks and mechanics, because ultimately that is what is going to keep you alive. It's blocks and also some healing. I currently run full Minstrel with Monk runes. All of my weapons are Minstrel, and I use a Harrier's backpiece. That's not for any particular reason. However, what I have is a full Harrier's set ready to go. If I need to lower my toughness, or if I am in an encounter where I don't particularly have too much of an issue tanking, or for whatever reason the power would benefit me more. It also results in slightly, I believe it's slightly higher healing power. Yeah, slightly higher healing power and lower concentration, so you can make that decision yourself based on what you prefer. The easiest way to start is on 4 Minstrels. You could also consider something like a Herald rune. They can be quite useful for survivability as well. I don't personally think that I would consider using them. So it gives you toughness, boon duration, and when you use a heal skill, you apply protection to nearby allies on a 10-second cooldown, which is really, really good, as you'll be using your mantra, at least the first charge of your mantra, pretty consistently. The only thing is, protection uptime isn't particularly an issue, and also if you're running full minstrels, you definitely do not need more toughness. So if you're running Harriers, you could maybe consider Herald Runes, but full minstrels with Monk Runes is perfect. Monk Runes give you a very, very big boost to your healing. You're constantly producing boons, so there's no reason you wouldn't have 10 stacks of this at all times. And yeah, so my armor and all my trinkets and my weapons are minstrel. My back piece is Harriers, and I use transference and concentration sigils in absolutely all of my weapons. I don't see any reason you would run anything else if your goal is to heal and attack at the same time. And I would say that the more comfortable you become with encounters, you can start to add in more pieces of Harriers. And as for food, delicious rice balls are always going to be the best food. There's no reason to take damage reduction food, you just don't need it. Bountiful maintenance oils are fantastic for Heal Firebrand, but not totally necessary for tank. There are magnanimous maintenance oils which give you concentration based on your vitality and toughness, so that synergizes really well with minstrel gear. These aren't super cheap. I don't personally know of any alternatives. I'm sure that there are some. So, first we'll go over the basic tank Heal Firebrand setup that you'll be running most of the time. So I'll run over the traits quickly, and then we'll go over variations afterwards. So first you have Vigorous Precision in the Honor Tree. Sorry, this is the Honor Tree Virtues in Firebrand. So Vigorous Precision, this doesn't really matter. You won't be critically striking very often. You'll get vigor from other sources anyway, and you also have increased endurance regeneration down here. So this is not important. Invigorated Bulwark is really good trait that you pretty much never want to swap out. So this increases your healing to other allies each time you block an attack. So all the time, basically, because while you won't be blocking every single attack from a boss, you will be blocking the big ones, and this just increases your healing to others by 5% for 20 seconds, and it can stack up to 5 times, which is just so big. Mace skills gaining reduced recharge and their boons gaining increased duration is great as well, but you won't always be running mace, but you will always be running this. Next, you have Selfless Daring. At the end of your dodge roll, heals nearby allies. This is pretty big, especially as you can see with some decent healing gear. I'm actually on my tank gear, yeah, so that's 1,500 healing just from dodge rolling. You don't always want to use your dodge roll to heal, but it's great filler healing when you either don't have anything or you're moving the boss and people have taken damage. Honorable Staff, so you just gain concentration. You gain 120 concentration from this, and you gain an additional 120 concentration while wielding the staff. So this is pretty big because you're generating swiftness and might in staff. Nothing else, but might is really big, and that's an extra 240 concentration from just holding the stick. The recharge of the ability is also reduced, so that's pretty good, by 20%. So you've got 12 seconds and 16 seconds here, 15 and 20, so big difference. Purity of Body, Your Virtue Skill 2 passive also regenerates endurance, which is huge. Tome 2 is where you're going to get your big heals and Condi Cleanse. And finally, Rip Resistance. Symbols are improved and heal allies, so their duration is increased by 2 seconds, their radius is increased, and they heal allies over the duration. So I don't know if you saw there, the radius indicator of the ability is smaller than it ends up being, because the radius is increased. In virtues, you've got Inspired Virtue, so you just apply boons passively to allies when you activate them, which is, it's pretty nice. Regeneration and protection. You won't worry so much about the might, realistically. Retaliatory Subconscious, so you gain retaliation and ages when disabled. This one is here because there's no better option. Virtue of Retribution, gain retaliation when you activate a virtue, and retaliation that you grant has increased duration, which is a pretty big deal, especially if you're running the mantra here. For example, you're granting, let's see, 10 seconds there. I'd have to go to another line, and it is 9.25 seconds without, so a little bit of a difference. Absolute Resolution, activating Virtue Skill 2 removes conditions from nearby allies, and Virtue Skill 2's passive effect is stronger. So Virtue Skill 2 is this. Again, your Temporary Resolve, which is where your healing, some of your healing is. The passive effect is stronger, which is a passive heal. In an AoE, it just pulses out. You can see that 206 healing. I don't know exactly how often, but you'll notice. The passive effect, so it's stronger, and it also grants 15% endurance, 15% increased endurance regeneration, and when you activate it, you remove 3 conditions, which is great because that's where you're going for your Condi Cleanse anyway. So you click that, or you press that, as you shouldn't be clicking buttons like I do. You've cleansed 3 conditions, and then you can use Chapter 2 here, which is where another one of your big Condi Cleanses is. So that's 6 conditions removed with 2 buttons. So that's great. Power of the Virtuous. We don't care about the increased damage, but the virtues gaining reduced recharge is great. 15% lower cooldown on these. It's not your main source of boons, as I don't find myself dipping into tomes all the time, but they're great clutch abilities. And then Battle Presence. Nearby allies gain the passive effect of Virtue Skill 2, which is really, really great, and synergizes really well with this. So your allies essentially near you are getting that heal over time, and they're getting the increased endurance regeneration, which is pretty big. Firebrand is your final trait, obviously. So your specialization. So you've got Liberator's Vow first, which is granting allies quickness when you use your heal skill. Pretty simple. Press your heal skill, give quickness, and it's in a radius around you as well. Swift Scholar, equipping or stowing a virtue grants quickness, so we get quickness as well as retaliation and protection there. Weighty terms. So I found when I first started playing Heal Firebrand, before I was tanking, I didn't really understand what the need for this was, because I didn't understand how the immobilizer here could really see any value. You don't ever want to burn your mantras. Didn't really make sense to me, and that is still the case. You don't ever want to burn your mantras. However, I now realize that the 20% recharge reduction is the important thing here. You getting that. It's a fairly significant difference. So here, for example, you can see it's a charge recovery time of 9.5 seconds with the trait, and without it, it's 12. That is really, really massive when you're needing to block a big attack, and it just applies to all your mantras, which is obviously huge. You gain increased attributes from imbued haste while you're affected by quickness. You're always going to be affected by quickness because you are a quickness generator, so you're pretty much always going to be having increased healing power and vitality, which is pretty big for you. And then finally, Lawmaster, your tome skills gain reduced recharge. It's 33%, which is very, very big, and between 15%, 33%, really, really big reduction in the cooldown. Again, not always using your tomes. I don't find myself always using your tomes. You might find the same thing, but retaining the passives while they're on cooldown is pretty big, because you are still sharing that heal. You're still sharing the endurance regeneration, even when you've used it, and yeah, that makes for a happy subgroup. So yeah, those are the that's the basic setup that I use for tanking, and now I'll go over variations for specific encounters. So in terms of trait variations, what I'll do is I'll go over all the traits that I think are worth anything, and I just really won't talk about the traits that don't do anything for you, because there are quite a number of traits that don't provide you any value and aren't really worth considering. So here in Honor, you can consider swapping out Honorable Staff for Pure of Heart when you're not running a staff. Without a staff, all you're really getting here is 120 concentration. So Aegis healing when it blocks an attack is definitely going to be more valuable. As you can see, it's over 1,000 healing with tank gear. If you are not responsible for quickness, you can consider swapping both. You can consider swapping Liberator's Vow for Archivist of Whispers. I don't. I just don't. It's something that you can consider, but I mean, this is just free quickness. But if you know that you've definitely got it covered, then there's not really any reason. If you're struggling with quickness, you can use Stalwart Speed. I know that I definitely struggle in some encounters when I'm forgetting to use my quickness mantra from time to time. This will give you even more quickness on your heal skill and your elite mantra as well. Virtues is the first to go. So when we're looking at Radiance, it's pretty much always going to be 2, 1, 2. None of the other traits provide you any value whatsoever. This is what you're here for Perfect Inscription, so you can share the passive of your signet and reduce the cooldown. Very, very strong. Very strong for break bar heavy encounters like Slothazor, like Samurog, even encounters like Deimos. You can use it as an opener and then try and line it up with the debuff that Deimos gets from Saul, which will further boost your DPS class's damage. A very nice combo that I've seen boost big damage numbers. This Wrath of Justice we choose because there's no other option, and Right Hand Strength, the same thing, not really any other option. So I think if giving yourself Fury and giving yourself Retail, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. Now in Valor, this is where I like to come for tank specific traits when I'm worried about my own personal survivability, or I don't have anything better to run. So in the first line here, you've got Focus Mastery, which gives you protection on your focus skills and gives them reduced recharge. I quite enjoy this one. Shield of Wrath is on, is obviously affected by this, and it gives you a shorter cooldown. The protection doesn't matter so much. You'll often have permanent protection uptime anyway. Smiter's Boon, is that what it's called? Yeah, Smiter's Boon is also one to consider as you cure conditions from allies. When you use your mantra, it's on a 20-second cooldown, so it's pretty decent, but it's a passive. It doesn't really do anything for you actively. These two, these two aren't bad. So you get Aegis when you are struck below the health threshold, which is 50%. Shouldn't really ever be that low, but it's going to happen sometimes. Steadfast Courage gives you protection when you block an incoming attack with Aegis. There doesn't seem to be any cooldown on this, and you'll be blocking constantly, so this is where you're going to get a lot of your protection. There are two options in this tier, and Stalwart Defender is definitely one of them. You gain increased toughness while you're wielding the shield, and the skills gain reduced recharge. So these are a great combo for playing safe. The only difficulty that you might run into is in terms of toughness. If you swap off the shield, you need to make sure that nobody else in your team has a level of toughness that would interfere with the tanking. Things could get hairy. The only other option here is communal defenses. Blocking attack grants Aegis to nearby allies. You will be blocking constantly. There is a cooldown of 15 seconds on this, but it's there as an alternative. Here is the real reason why you take Valor in the first place. To check the name, as it boosts the healing of this skill and reduces the recharge quite significantly. So you can see there that's almost 4,000 and 2,500 healing. Huge, just absolutely massive. There is an argument to be made for both altruistic healing and tenacious defense, but I would never run them if I'm running Merciful Intervention. There's no reason to run this if you're not running Merciful Intervention. Then I would say absolutely go for either Tenacious Defense or Altruistic Healing, but don't take Tenacious Defense if you're never using Tome 3, because then it also doesn't get any value. There's nothing for you in the Zeal line. This gives you power and damage. It doesn't do anything unless you're opting for a more damage-oriented tank role, which is absolutely fine and can work, and is something that I would like to try in the future. You as a tank, Heal Firebrand, have nothing to gain here. So you've got Virtues, 222 to start with. You can dip into Valor and Radiance depending on your encounter knowledge, the encounter that you're in. And yeah. So for utility skills, what I'll do is, again, I'll run the most basic setup first, which genuinely does happen to be the safest, and then we will go over utility variations, as there are quite a few for the Heal Firebrand and Heal Firebrand Tank, but there are also some that are slightly harder to run. So the first two skills will never swap out unless by some magical coincidence you are not responsible for quickness. So Mantra of Solace is always going to be your heal skill. It does not provide there's no other heal skill that provides what this provides. The sheer amount of blocks for you and your allies is just, it's phenomenal. Don't swap this out for anything. There is nothing else for you here. Mantra of Potence is where you get a lot of your quickness. You get some might from it too. You can reach 22 stacks of might by using this and Staff 4. It's not 25, but you can always blast the Tome 1 skill for Firefield to get that 25. This never changes unless you're not responsible for quickness, but you always are. So if you do happen to not be, you can always swap this out for something like Mantra of Law for a little bit extra healing. Merciful Intervention, as I mentioned before, is one of my favorite abilities in the game. It's just such an incredible heal. I think it's great. I don't see any reason not to run it in save comps. It isn't something that you want to be running if you need to never move the boss. So unfortunately, the only places I really take it are either places where I don't risk moving the boss too much, or places where I need to get back to the boss after being moved away or being away to deal with the mechanics. So if I get unfortunately teleported by the Veil Guardian, I can use Merciful Intervention, like I said, to teleport quickly back to my allies. Bow of Truth is a big heal. As you can see, there's 432 healing, and that's with my tank gear on, and that's got 15 impacts. You have 2 of these. They have a little bit of a cooldown between them, but it's huge. It does take a little while to come up, so you do need to kind of precast it before you need it. When those arrows start falling is when the healing starts. So if the green is about to explode, it's a little bit too late. And then you've got Mantra of Liberation here, which is the only one that you will swap out depending on the encounter in the safe utility bar, because there are a number of encounters in which stability and stun break don't do anything, because you will neither be CC'd or knocked back or anything by the boss. So this just doesn't really do anything except for help out your Dragon Hunters. So you will always pretty much swap this for Feel My Wrath. It's tempting to go for one of these. They don't do anything. Signet of Courage I've always found extremely difficult to use. It may feel like, oh my god, fully heal 5 nearby allies, that's crazy, but ultimately, by the time you've completed this channel, the people who are low on health have already died. So not worth the risk. Better to go with the Quickness and Fury and get the encounter over with as soon as possible. So that's my safe setup. Again, these two don't change. This can always change if you're not facing any CC. If you're taking Feel My Wrath, you are generating Quickness and Fury. You can consider dropping Axe if you're taking it anyway, but Axe is generally the go-to weapon anyway. So other options obviously here are Bane and Wrath Signet if you're running the Radiance trait line. Stand Your Ground is a 10 target 5 stack of stability shout. It's incredibly strong. This is very good for CC heavy encounters. For telegraphed CC when you know it's coming, very good. And obviously the cooldown reduction of this is going to be significantly decreased by Alacrity. You can also, for low pressure encounters or encounters with lots of conditions, take Mantra of Law. This provides a mantra that provides regen and Condi Cleanse. Now, there are scenarios where you would take this for different reasons. For example, for Condi Cleanse, you might need it at Sloth and Zera, for example, to cleanse a lot of conditions. But you might need the regen over time at Sabbath, for example, where there isn't a lot of condition, or there aren't any conditions, but you need to keep people topped up and regenerating all the time. Other choices are Hammer of Wisdom. I will pretty much always take that in combination with Bane Signet at something like Samurog, who has very frequency CC bars. These will always be up in regular DPS comps. I'm not talking about god tier DPS here. Wall of Reflection if you are the solo Reflect and Matthias. These are obviously examples of bosses that don't require tanks, but you're playing Heal Firebrand, so you're likely going to be swapping to tank only when needed. Retreat is another big one for encounters that really require shared blocks, like Deimos. Yeah, it's a very big one. I wouldn't run this anywhere else, and I've only recently started running it at Deimos when it was suggested to me. I do find that it's good to not have to burn mantra when you really need it, because obviously if it's between dying and burning your mantra, you burn your mantra. That's it. There are no other options for you. Obviously that is a decent amount, but that's pretty much it. So in terms of tips and tricks, I think what I'll try and do is I'll try and cover a lot of it in actual gameplay footage. So one thing to always keep in mind is your positioning relative to your squad. Every encounter that I've tanked at requires the tank obviously to face the boss, and to try your best to get the boss to face away from your team. What this does is it allows your DPS classes that need to flank or benefit from flanking to do that, and it also means that any boss that actually does attack you won't be attacking your team at the same time. There are a few things to keep in mind when positioning like that. Is the main thing is your mantras and your shouts, as they can't be targeted. Your mantras will blast a cone in front of you. It's a pretty fair distance, and your shouts will do an AoE. You'll have to look up specific distances, but suffice to say that you want to be making sure that you are close enough to your team when you use your mantra and facing them, and also when you use your shouts, you need to make sure that you're close enough to your team that they'll benefit from them as well. Now, your goal as a Heal Firebrand is to keep everyone else alive and yourself at the same time. There is almost equal priority on both of those things. Neither of them should really slip. It's always going to take getting used to. It's not super easy to manage the healing of your squad while maneuvering a boss, if that is what the encounter requires. But it absolutely can be done, and I think that it's best done on this class. Obviously the healing, definitely. You have a lot of survivability, both for yourself and for others. There's no reason to not use all of the tools given to you. And if you need to burn some cooldowns to keep yourself alive, then that is absolutely fine. You'll always have ranged healing in either your Bow of Truth or your Staff 2 and 3. Ideally you wouldn't want to be spot healing, but it happens. It's just the way it is. This is a guide more catered to pug runs anyway, because that is where I get most of my kills, and I've gotten comfortable tanking bosses for pugs now. So there isn't any real super specific stuff to Heal Firebrand Tank. Apply all the knowledge that you can get from other guides for Heal Firebrand to your gameplay. Just keep in mind your positioning relative to your team and the boss. Keep the boss facing away from your team as much as possible. Move as little as possible. Obviously, in some encounters that is not possible, but ideally you want to be keeping them as still as you can. When you are tanking something like Veil Guardian, for example, if you're tanking next to the wall, the easiest thing to do to avoid the teleports is to simply dodge roll into the wall once the arena has formed. If you do it before that, you will dodge out. And everyone on your team can do this, but it means that you can stand with your back to the wall, the boss facing you, your team facing the boss, and you are essentially immune to all mechanics as you are the furthest from the Seekers. You can dodge into the wall because of the because your back is to it. You can dodge into the wall because it teleports, and when greens come, you can focus on getting your party healed up. That is, if you're ignoring greens. But in pug runs you do. So yeah, nothing else really comes to mind at the moment. Any gameplay footage to follow. We'll have more encounter specific stuff that I might not talk about, but I might just make a mention towards them in the video. So I hope you learned something. I don't know what else to say, so peace. Boy.